Welcome to another episode of the Way Up Podcast. I'm your host, Geoff Knoll, and today's guest has become a really good friend of mine, Nathan Warson. Living in Lebanon, Missouri, Nathan's journey spans boat manufacturing, helping a small team build a big church, redefining his identity, and going all in starting his own business, Warson Media, that specializes in real estate photography and cutting-edge drone work. Join us as we unravel Nathan's story to hear the diverse experiences that shaped the resilient and innovative individual he is today. Get ready for inspiration, motivation, and a glimpse into the boundless possibilities that unfold when you overcome adversity, embrace change, and chase your dreams. This is the Way Up Podcast, and I'm excited to have you on this extraordinary ride. The Way Up Podcast is proudly brought to you by my real estate team, the Noble Team eXp Realty. We're redefining industry standards in the markets we operate. Distinguishing ourselves from the crowd, we leverage our uniqueness to gain a strategic edge, all while elevating not only ourselves, but also those in our world, including our competitors. Join us on this journey of innovation and excellence. Your time and investment will undoubtedly be well placed. Hang with us till the end. I know you won't be disappointed.
And I am really excited to be here with my friend Nathan Warson. Thank you for coming on here, man.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
So I just want you to start from the beginning. Where are you from? Who are you, Nathan?
Where am I from? Well, I originally am from Jefferson City, Missouri, and I was born and raised there. Jaybird, went to high school there, and so I'm from Jefferson City and went to college in Bolivar, Missouri. So
their mascot is the Jaybirds at Jefferson City.
It's the Jaybirds, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So Naked as a Jaybird.
Naked as a Jaybird.
Jefferson City High School.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, sure.
So
what did you ask me? You asked me where I was from and
who you are. You are a photographer, drone operator. You do a bunch of different things, but that's just the world that I know of you. So.
Yeah. I guess. So like you said, I'm Nathan Warson, and I own a company called Warson Media, and focusing mostly on real estate, photography, videography, and kind of found a niche in flying drones. So that's kind of what I do. That's a lot of what I do for you.
Yeah.
Which, we kind of started a relationship, in the fall, I guess, maybe the end of summer,
end of summer,
and
August, September, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So we've done quite a few since then.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun.
It's been good for my business too. Just the way
Awesome.
that we're able to present with that drone flying through the house.
Yeah.
It makes us look like we're really good at what we do.
Yeah.
So
and we've kind of done some different things with you and Cassie to get you guys, in front of the camera a little bit, and kind of pushing me.
Yeah.
Pushing
all of us.
Doing some new things. So it's been a lot of fun. Yeah,
it's
been good.
So you've been in photography and drone for how long?
I've been full-time 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
So what is Nathan Warson life look like after college, between that and drone and photography?
Wow. That's so I went to college at SBU in Bolivar, Southwest Baptist University, right after high school. Freshman year, met the girl that ended up being my wife. And so Southwest Bridal University came into play there.
Nice.
Got she got her MRS degree. And but little joke there.
I think that happens a lot.
Yeah, I think so. And so I started as a computer science major and then switched to photography major. I've always kind of done photography through high school and was on the newspaper and the yearbook and all that. Spent a lot of time in the darkroom because back then we used film.
Oh, cool.
So I did a lot of processing and a lot of time in the darkroom, and so just kind of had a passion for that. And I come from a really conservative background. I always saw the arts and photography and that kind of creative space as something that wasn't going to really make any money. It was just going to be, kind of a side thing, but I really wasn't good in school. So I didn't know I couldn't pass the math classes to do computer science, even though I'm really good with computers.
Right.
But you've got to have, you've got to take these prerequisite classes. I wasn't very good at any of that. I was just not a good test taker. I don't read well. So there's just these things that have always been hindrances. But photography was fun. And so I switched my major to that and was like, we'll see what happens. So after college, got the degree. My wife was from Lebanon, so just down the road here. I got a job at a factory in Lebanon as a customer service person, working with clients and working with that, and ended up just finding a place there in the manufacturing and in working with customers and clients and people, and spent a lot of time on the phone working with people in Indiana and working with Tracker Marine and G3 and just kind of doing all that. And so I spent the first 15 years of my professional career actually in the boat business, doing customer service and sales and marketing and different things. It kind of all wadded into one. When you're representing a company to a manufacturer, you've got to be their representative in that company. Like when I was working for a client, then I would go to like the engineering department and say, this is what we want to do. I would sometimes sketch out something that was in my head about what their console needed to look like, or what their, and so there's actually some consoles from the 2000s in different boats that were actually drawn out by me on paper.
That's awesome.
And then we created them. So I would always bring that artistic kind of engineering. Like I'm left-handed, but I do everything right-handed. And so my brain works on both sides, which is kind of weird and sometimes frustrating. So I'm real, like I'm very conservative and really real, but yet I have this creative side too. So it kind of blends all together a lot of times. And I think you've seen that in what we do. 15 years in the boat business, went from 2 different companies a couple different times. So I worked for one and then worked for another. And then this one called me back and I worked back for them. And then this one called me back and I worked back for them. So I kind of went back and forth a couple of times and ended up being customer service manager and was in charge of quite a bit of just internal communication and sales and customer service, and making sure that people were taken care of was the biggest thing. In that time, I've always had a very church background. I've always had I was born and raised in a church, and mom worked for the church. And so I've just always had this faith background. I always kind of felt like, so there was always something funny. I had a roommate in college, great friend, love him to death. And he went all the way through college and got a ministry degree, like a youth ministry degree. And I always thought it was funny because I got a photography degree, but I was doing youth ministry.
Yep.
And he wasn't doing youth ministry anywhere, but got a youth ministry degree. And now he works for H&R Block and he lives in Washington, D.C. So it's like he's got this degree that I was doing what his degree was, but yet I didn't have any desire to get a degree in that.
Right.
And I always felt like I was just supposed to just volunteer and never really thought that being more than a volunteer was in the cards for me. But I always had a desire to and I don't know if it was a desire to be somebody, because the church gives people that are kind of nobodies a face and a name and a way to, like, if you're like a great server and you do all these great things, then you become this person, right? And so I was always working a job and volunteering at the church, and we had our first child in that time, and just it was good. And so we had our second child in 2008, and in 2010 some things kind of went crazy, and a group of us decided to leave the church. So we started another church, and it's a long story. In 5 years, we had gone from 35 to almost 1,000 people.
Wow.
And so that was like a whirlwind.
That was in Lebanon?
In Lebanon, yeah.
Holy crap.
And so it was like this whirlwind of volunteering went to another level, right? When you're starting this thing that you feel like God is telling you to do and that you're feeling impressed to do, and you've got a group of people behind it and doing it, and your best friend is the pastor, and you're the worship guy, and you're kind of doing all these things. I'd go to work, and then on like every lunch break, I'd be over at the building that we had and trying to get something going, whether it be a live stream or like trying to figure something techie out, trying to get this, trying to get a video feed on a TV in another room so that we could have overflow, and just always trying to figure out the next thing that we were doing. Ended up buying a building, and like just it kind of was this whole big whirlwind, right, for 5 years. And then in 2016, the opportunity came that I thought I was living for. And I say that in retrospect, of course, but at the time it was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. Like, this is my calling. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to start this church and grow this thing and work with these people and see people saved and do all these things. And that's what I'm supposed to do. So opportunity came. I quit my job and went full time at the church in 2016. Took a pretty significant pay cut to do that. I was in management at the position I was in, and I was moved up in the ranks and was making decent money. And so I took a pay cut and took that job, and everything was great. It was I was living a dream, so I took the job as executive pastor / worship pastor. So I was over everything. That basically my job was to take whatever the senior pastor said and make it happen. 2020 COVID hit, and everything that I was doing, I felt like I was doing what God was telling me to do. So I'm running like 100 miles an hour in whatever direction I feel like I'm supposed to go, because that's what, like, when you're in that world, everything is spiritually motivated. Everything is God's voice, but it may be other factors, but
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, so there's this really crazy, I look back at it now and it's even hard for me to, like, this conversation would be totally different 3.5 years ago.
Sure.
Right. So I guess I'm kind of leading all this up to where I want to go, I guess, or where I think we should go. So in 2020, I had been helping somebody, I had been helping somebody start a business, and I helped them kind of grow that business. And unfortunately that was causing some strain. And we had bought some land, and we were moving into a building project to build a new church and be out on this piece of property. And so my plan was to shift. I had hired somebody to be the worship pastor. And so I had just backed up into a role of just leading whenever he wanted me to, rather than being the guy that was doing it all the time. And so that was changing. And instead of doing all the financial stuff, I had shifted that to somebody else in the meantime, so that I could focus on this new building project and what we were going to do in 2020. And we were going into this whole like campaign and the Believe campaign, and we need your money, and we're going to do all this thing and give above and beyond, and like all the things, right? So all the church things that you do. And COVID hit, totally changed everything, right? So we go from a full church to nobody, because nobody can come. So we're trying to figure out, and I remember specifically at Easter of 2020, we were trying to figure out, how do we do Easter remotely with everybody at their own homes? And so we did like this whole music video thing, and just this whole production that we did, that we were going to live stream, because we were all still working, even though a lot of people had gone home, and were stuck at home. We were still going to the office every day. We were still trying to maintain and do these things. And so we got through 2020, and Geoff, I was falling apart. Because I didn't know who I was anymore. I was being pulled in several different directions, but none of the directions were what they used to be. So I was struggling with that, because some of the things that I had put my identity in were no longer part of who I was anymore. Like, I wasn't worship pastor anymore. So that was part of my identity. That was part of who I was. I was an executive pastor. That was who I was. You know what I mean? Like, that becomes your identity. It becomes what you are, who you are, and what you are. And my dad had passed away in 2019, and I didn't realize how much that was going to affect me. And I remember specifically saying to my wife and a couple of other people, I feel like I just need to go away for a little bit. I need to take 2 or 3 days and just go away. And I never would do it because I'm a workaholic by nature. I will work, because that's when you're good at something and you feel like you're good at it, you just work. And that's what I did. I wouldn't allow myself. And I was waiting for people to kind of force me to and give me permission. So it just never happened. Nobody's giving you permission. Nobody's saying, no, really take these 2 days and go. And I don't want to blame other people, but that's what I was waiting for. Right. Long story short, in 2020, I made a couple of mistakes financially at the church. Looking back on it, could it have been avoided? For sure. Was it stuff that it wasn't like I didn't embezzle money? I didn't, you know what I mean? Like I didn't do anything. I missed a payment on the land and I moved a date so that my spreadsheet was right, but it looked like I was trying to hide it. And that spiraled into me losing my job. So October of 2020, I found myself on my back. Like literally just the guy that I had helped start a business ended up doing some really stupid stuff. I told him that I didn't want any part of it anymore and that he needs to get me out of it so that he can do whatever he wants and I can focus on what I need to focus on, which was trying to preserve my job at the time. And that ended up losing me a pretty good chunk of money. And then I also lost my job in the process. Because when you're on staff at a church, it's not just work. It's like everything kind of all blends together. And so when bad stuff was happening over here that I didn't really know about, other people would find out about it. You know what I mean? And it all became this, like, they're your family, your friends, your boss, your job, it's all just like this big mess. We had let a couple of people go before, and so it was my turn, I guess. You know, I thought about on the way up here, Geoff, the Way Up podcast is what you name this. And I don't want my story to come across as woe is me or I'm the victim here or anything like that, because I know what I did. I know what I messed up. I wish that I knew now what I know. But in October and November of 2020, I found myself in a spot that I had never been before, which was no job, no paycheck, they gave me a severance. I guess you can call it a severance, but I knew it was going to run out. Sitting at home by myself most of the time. Kids are in school. Wife is a teacher. And so she was at school. And I spent a lot of time just at home and didn't really know what I was going to do. Didn't know what to do because my identity, who I was wrapped up in the church and in what I did for the church and who I was at the church, and all these things were now all gone. And I didn't really know how to process through that. Only thing that was really strong was that I couldn't let go of God and my faith in him. But I didn't know what that looked like at that point. I remember lots of conversations that felt like went to nothing. I felt like there was a lot of yelling and a lot of like, why did this happen to me? And growing up in the church, you feel like if you do the right things and you're a good person and you do what you're told, right? What you were taught, which is you got to pray and you got to read your Bible and you got to do quiet time and you got to tithe 10% and you've got to do all these things. You think that God's going to protect you and keep you from where I was at that moment. And I'm going, God, I thought that this was going to be different. I thought I was going to retire from the church and was going to just be, that was going to be who I was, right? So this is where it kind of goes up, right? I talked to somebody that was a friend whose son played basketball with my son, and really the only interaction that I had with people at that point was was when I would go to the basketball games and watch my son play basketball, and because it was in a different town and it was with people that were not necessarily associated with the church. Some of them had been, and they had left already. So like it was different, because it was really difficult to be with the people that I didn't have a draw to go back to church. I didn't have a draw I didn't have it in me to reach out to people, because I had been told that I wasn't enough anymore. And that I had messed up, and like the shame of that and the guilt of that made it difficult to even be around people, especially when there was no empathy, especially when it was just, this is what you're supposed to do and this is how you get over this. And I'm trying to say it open enough that people aren't going to like blow your chat up, because this gets really messy. Relationships get really messy. Things can still be messy if I want to make it messy, and I don't want to make it messy anymore. I think there was a time where I did, but I kept my mouth shut. My wife encouraged me to keep my mouth shut. And so I kind of just stayed to myself, and everybody kind of let me. And that hurt. It hurt when people that you thought were your best friends didn't know what to do anymore. And so they just didn't do anything. So I sat at home for 3 or 4 months. And I just pouted. I just asked God, why did I feel so strongly about what I was doing? And then it just all fell apart. It just all stopped. Let's see. We got through Christmas. We got through the first of the year. My wife and I stayed home for the first time on New Year's Eve. We didn't go to the church party that we always went to, and we just sat at home, and our kids went to that church party. I never told my kids that they couldn't go wherever they wanted to go, which, so they went to that, and they did some other things with the church for quite a while, actually. And I didn't want to be that guy that was like, this is what we're going to do, and I'm mad. And I didn't feel like that was the right thing to do either. So January, February, I had talked to one of the fathers that my son played basketball with his son. And I can remember sitting, he's a builder in town. He builds houses. And I was sitting in his car one day. It was cold, and we were sitting there just, talking. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, man. I have no idea what I'm going to do. And he said, well, what about real estate photography? And I was like, is that a thing? And he's like, yeah, it's a thing. You need to start researching it, start looking at it. So I immediately went home and just started, I started looking through what's going on in real estate and what all this stuff. And I was like, this might be a thing. And the good thing was, he's like, I've got some houses that, are pretty much done. Why don't you go in and see what you can do, So I went in and I started shooting some photography and doing some things. And Geoff, it was like, that was where I started to find some kind of peace, because I'd been putting resumes in and been kind of going back to the boat business where I was at, trying to figure out, like, where am I supposed to go now? What am I supposed to do? I got to provide for my family. Right. And when you get down that far, you're like, okay, wait, money's going to run out. I've got to do something. I can't just sit here.
Right.
I guess I could have, I could have said, government, hey, help me, but I didn't. I didn't ever feel like that was an option. And so I started doing some stuff, and January and February, I think both months combined, January and February in 2021, I made like $1,500, because I've always had Warson Photography. It was always like a side gig. I've had that business for 20 years, but it was always a side thing. I never thought I could actually make money taking pictures. You'd make a little bit on the side, but never enough to provide for a family. By the time I ended up doing some of that stuff and not making a whole lot of money, I'm like, okay, God, this is where I feel peace, but I can't make can't live on $1,500 even in a month. I can't, there's no way.
Right.
Like, we can't do this. And I yelled at him again. And I was like, why? And I sat on my couch and I just was crying and yelling, and just, it was just a bad day. It was in like early March, I think, maybe late March. I think it was late March. Yeah. After I got done yelling at him, it was almost like I could feel him say, "Are you done?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm done. I'm just done. I don't know what else to do. I'm done. I'm at the end of me. I'm at the end. I don't know what to do. And so I went outside and I was trying to figure out something on my drone, on one of my drones, and I just started tinkering with it again. And that day I was going up to the lake to help somebody that I had shot some video for. And they were having a hard time getting it downloaded and, you know, all that. And so I told him that I'd drive up there and help them figure it out, help them get it all. So I'm flying a drone that morning, and it was cold, and I got a call from somebody that I'd never talked to before. And they said, "Hey, we've got this thing in Camdenton. Can you just do some aerial shots, you know, now that the leaves are starting to come out?" And I'm like, yeah, sure. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, that's going to at least pay for my gas to get up there. I kind of thanked God for that. You know, I remember being like, all right, okay, I get it. I get it. And I drove up there, and on the way up there, I got a call from another realtor in Lebanon. "Hey, when you get back, can you shoot this real quick before the basketball game tonight?" And I'm like, yeah, I think I can do that. Let me see when I get back, you know? And then I got up there, and this lady, I went and sat down with her, and she goes, "Did you bring any business cards?" And I said, yeah, I brought a few in with me. And she goes, "Good, because I want to introduce you to some people." And I'm like, okay. And about that time, a lady comes running through the area that we're sitting in, and that lady hollered at her, and she's like, "Hey, come here. I want to introduce you to this drone guy." And I'm like, and that lady she freaked out. She was like, "Drone guy, get in my office, like right now." And I'm like, what? Like, what are you doing? And the lady I was working with, I looked at her, and she goes, go now, go. I'm like, okay. So I go into this lady's office, and she goes, "My son just crashed our drone this weekend. We've been flying without a certificate. We know that. We need you. Here's a job. Here's a job. Here's a property I need. Here's a property I need. And I'm like, hang on, wait a second. Like, who are you? And what's going on?" So we keep talking, and she hollers at her assistant, and her assistant comes in, and she goes, "Nathan, if you could buy any drone right now, what drone would you want?" And I told her, I said, "Well, I'd want this drone that just came out. This is what I would buy." And she hollered at her assistant. She goes, "Go buy that drone for him right now." And I'm like, what are you doing? And she goes, we just crashed our drone. We need a new drone anyway. I want to get you the one that you want to fly." All right. So, like, think about it, Geoff. That morning, I'm sitting on my couch yelling at God because I don't know how I'm going to do this. And then that afternoon, I'm standing in front of this realtor who's giving me all these jobs and buying me a drone. I walked out of there, and Geoff, I sat in my car and I cried for about a half hour. And I cried tears of joy and tears of thankfulness, because it was like, I've been through this whole thing, and now I'm understanding that, God, you want to be my provider, but I've got to let you have it. And so in that, we start talking, me and this realtor, we start working out some deals. She wanted me to work for her exclusively at the lake. And so we made a deal to do that for a time period. And Geoff, she paid me every week $200 less than what I was making before a week. And I was like, God, I don't deserve this. Because I can make up another $200 somewhere else in Lebanon, right? Mm-hmm. Doing another property. Like, that's just one or two more properties a week in Lebanon. And I can do everything she wants me to do here. And so I did that for that first year. And it was like my relationship with God became different than what it had been before, because all the things that I was told I was supposed to do, I wasn't doing anymore. And so I was spending time with him, but I was spending quiet, peaceful time with him. I wasn't feeling like I had to read something. I wasn't feeling like I had to do something. I just felt like I wanted to be with him. And that's what I did. And I still do that to an extent today, because my relationship, my Christianity, that whole world doesn't look the same for me as it did. So from 2020, the end of 2020, 2021, and at the end of 2021, I looked at my numbers, and Geoff, I had made exactly what my salary used to be in 2020. God had provided, even though I was scared and I didn't know what I was doing, and I had no idea that this was going to happen. And I look back and I realized that not only did he provide a business opportunity for me in these relationships that I was gaining relationships with people that I didn't know, shouldn't know. And like, I'm not like this, I wasn't supposed to meet this lady. Like, you don't just hand a business card to somebody and have this opportunity come. Like, there's something going on there that I can't control. And I ended up doing like 250 some properties that year for her, and was able to really start working on the craft of what it is to shoot real estate, what it is to make a house look presentable and present it in a way that somebody wants to buy it, rather than just go in and shoot a picture. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so after that first year, I realized that, okay, maybe we can keep trying this. Like, I don't have to get a real job. Like, I can continue to do this. It's like every time I get nervous that this isn't going to work. Like, I remember specifically this time in 2022, like right now, January 2022, I'd had a good year, 2021, provided for the family, made the same amount of money that I made at the church. But I wasn't, like, January slowed way down, and I was going, oh boy, like, I'm nervous because I've got income tax coming. I've got all these, like, what's going on? And Geoff, every time I would get nervous, I would just I would go back to those times that I was just quiet and just peaceful with God. And I would go sit in my car, and I would just sit in quiet. I'd put my phone away. Like, seriously, I know it sounds really dumb, but I would just sit, and I would sit until I wasn't afraid anymore. And it was like that week would work out, and then the next week would work out. And then before I know it, I'm into March, and things are starting to green up again. And I'm starting to get a little busier. And then I get busy, and I forget that I'm like, okay, thank you, God, for everything that you're doing, but I don't have time to really sit right now. So I'm going to go work. And I could really tell, I went through all of 2021, and we started attending another church again in 2021. Was it 2021? 2022? No, 2022. We started attending another church, just attending, kind of because our kids were in that youth group and kind of doing these things. It wasn't the same church that I had got let go from, but it was another church. And so I'm trying to heal, right? I'm trying to realize that I can have a relationship with God and not have to do all of these things that I used to do to feel worthy, to feel worth something. And it just, we just got done with 2022. I did like 400 and some properties in 2022. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm just, if I'm bragging on anybody, I'm bragging on God. I'm bragging on just his favor, in what I was doing. I don't like saying those words. Like, I know you and I have talked a lot, and don't just throw out Christianese stuff at all. Like, I don't talk like that. But God is, he's real in a way that I've never felt him before, even though I felt like I was doing all the right things and doing what he wanted me to do back then. I don't feel the pressure to do all those things anymore and still feel like he loves me and feel like things are going to work out. I don't have to be successful as a real estate photographer to know that it's going to work out, to know that I'm still loved. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't even, when people say that I'm they label me as a photographer or a drone pilot, I don't label myself that, really, because that could change. Like, in 5 years, I may not be flying drones anymore. I may be doing something else that I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know, but I don't want to close my hand on what he's doing right now, or how he's providing for me right now, because in 5 years, he may be providing for me differently.
Sure.
And so 2022 is a good year. Rolled into 2023 and just ended 2023. I did like 570 properties, something like that. In 2023, I had another friend of mine shoot a little bit for me through the summer. And this next year, he's going to work for me all summer. And we're just going to keep riding it, And so when I really think about the Way Up podcast, that was my way up, right? I thought I was on cloud nine when we're running 1,000 people at the church and things are going good. And we're doing 3 services and all these things. And I'm helping a guy start a business and I'm seeing progress, and he's godding and he's doing all the things. And like, I thought that was the pinnacle of what I was supposed to be doing. And then I found myself at the end of everything. And I found out that God just wanted me to rely on him totally. Like, don't rely on this paycheck from this place. Don't rely on the accolades from these people. Don't put stock in any of that, because that can fade and go away. You can do one thing and it goes away. Boom.
Yeah.
And you find yourself at home by yourself, wondering what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm. There was a few things that you said that I do want to talk about. One, you said when you were in school, you weren't really good at some of the requirements.
Yeah.
But it didn't mean that you weren't good at computers and technological things like that. You were good with that.
I just can't do math.
I think a lot of people, they will connect the fact that they're not good at something and just decide to go a completely different direction just because they may not be good at this one thing.
Yeah.
Other thing I wanted to talk about was the things that you went through, that was the negative experiences that really felt like setbacks, are actually set you up for positives in your life. You know that you can get through a hard blow of losing your job and feeling like you're less than just because things aren't playing out the way that you think they should be because of the programming that we received. I grew up in the church too. My dad was a preacher. The churchy things, all of that. I have a major disconnect from really all of what I was programmed to believe, just because I was presented it as this is the way to believe.
Yeah.
I didn't even have options of different thought. So my faith, I believe, is way stronger because I've had some real experience and I've really seen the places where God has carried me when I was weak.
Yeah.
And when I shouldn't have been able to get up again.
Right.
When
I think
provided for.
And I think when I was in that position and when I was there, I started to realize his voice versus the voices that I had been hearing a lot. Meaning that I didn't have a bunch of people telling me this is what God sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that's what we do in the church, but that's sometimes what we do in the church.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so rather than if you're in a hard time, before I would encourage you to come to church and get involved and serve and do all these things. But now I'm going to encourage you to seek God, however that looks. I'm not going to tell you a program. I'm not going to tell you a thing. I'm not going to tell you anything. You know what I mean? Like, because that's where I truly found his voice, was when I was sitting there alone with nothing. Don't get me wrong. My wife is still, our relationship is so strong. And I think it's because of all this.
Mm-hmm.
I never lost my house. I never lost my cars. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I never got to a point where I guess I could have been further flat on my back. But to your point, I understand now that I don't have to fear tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to take care of itself. It really is. Like, that scripture is for real.
Mm-hmm.
But until you learn to live it, you don't, like, this is a whole new world, having your own business, doing your own thing, being your own boss, getting up in the morning, staying motivated, doing these things. This is a whole new world. You know, yesterday when it snows and everything gets all jumbled up for me, I have to get up today and go, all right, doing this podcast with Geoff, and this afternoon, I just got to go crazy and get stuff done. Right. So it's a whole new experience. And it's a whole new step into a faith that I never really stepped into, you know?
Yeah.
I never really understood. And so it changes my thought process too. It changes how I encourage people. It changes, it's changed everything. It's rewired me. Like you're saying, the faith of my youth is not the faith of my adulthood now.
Right. Well, it's easy to have faith whenever everything is going right. Mm-hmm. And everything is good.
Yeah.
But when the tide turns and it's not going good anymore, the faith comes from a different place, I think.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree with that.
I feel like, and I've felt somewhat separated from the church in a lot of ways. I'm just going back into this because of some of what we talked about, but my feelings is after I got away from it, I never felt like I fit into the box of what a Christian is.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just kind of keep it at arm's length anyways.
Mm-hmm.
I believed in God. I knew that God was real. I never doubted that everything just happens.
Right.
But because I spoke differently than other people, you know, I cuss sometimes. I use different language that's expressive in different ways, not to harm people, but I don't feel like that makes God look down on me. I feel like God is in everything that we do, and everything is for the good.
Yeah, I think for me, it's come down to I look at the church differently. I see it more as a business, and I see it more as a way for some people to have a position. Even the church that we attend now, I sit in the balcony, and when we sing songs together, you know, there's some things that I don't connect with anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I see people doing a lot of things that I felt like I used to always have to be a part of. And now I don't have to be a part of it to be loved by God, to be relationship with him, and to be a part of it. I hear, even when I hear the word church, you know, when I say the word church to you right now, it what's in your head is a building. What's in your head is a building with people in it doing things that churches do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to rewire my brain to think that the church is me.
Mm-hmm.
Even as broken as and messed up as I am, the church is me. The church is you. The church is what we're doing every day out here, selling houses, making them look good, trying to work with people. How can we rewire the brains of people to think that the church is not a building? It's just like I was a worship pastor. When I say the word worship, you think people standing on a stage, playing instruments and singing songs, and a congregation that is halfway engaged with that. But now when I think of worship, I think of that time that I got back in my car and I cried and thanked the Lord for what he had just provided and the opportunity that he had just opened up for me. That was more of a worship experience than maybe the last 5 years of leading it. Because we're not worshiping. A lot of the people in those churches are not worshiping when we're singing songs. They're standing there watching a performance. It may not be connecting here because you can't, unless you have a relationship to know what's going on, you can't say, let's worship together. Because I may be standing in the balcony not worshiping God at all. I may be watching you and critiquing what you're doing because that's what I did for so long. So the way that I worship God doesn't look like singing very much anymore. And that's okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that have changed and a lot of things that are different, but I don't necessarily think that it's wrong.
Right.
You know, some people in my life think it's wrong, I guess. But that's okay.
Well, I think the change is perspective.
It is
the
huge
change
perspective. Yeah.
Isn't at all with God. God never had any different feelings towards the person that worships in their car by themselves.
Yeah.
In quiet, or the person that does connect in worship singing.
Right. Absolutely.
You know,
and I'm not downplaying it at all.
No,
I think there's time for all of it.
Yeah. It's just the connection is between individual and God.
Yeah.
And that can happen anywhere, any place, any way.
Right. You know, I realized really quickly, my youngest son, whenever all this happened, he looked at his mom and I, and he said, does this mean I'm not a staff kid? My wife and I both realized in that moment that his perception of who he was a staff kid. I have had to figure out, okay, how do I, in this season, teach my kids how to love God and how to put their faith in him as they grow older? How do I teach them how to love him without showing them all the things that I used to show them? So they don't see their dad standing on stage anymore. They don't see their dad going every day to a building anymore, but they are seeing the blessings of God in what I'm doing now.
Yeah. That's how you teach them.
And that's how I'm trying to teach them.
You're just teaching by example.
Exactly. So I'm trying to not only rewire what I've thought and thought about who I was and who I am, but now I've got to also help my kids rewire who they are and who they think they are, and still love God, still love the church, still love the people of the church. I definitely didn't want to come out of this and my 16-year-old son hate God.
Right.
So he never heard come out of my mouth anything against the God who loves me. Never. I may have been mad. I may have been upset, but I want my 16-year-old to come out of this knowing that God loves him deeper than anything. And it's not the church that forms you and makes you. It's God that makes you.
Do you have these conversations with him?
I try.
Yeah.
I try. Sometimes I still run pretty hard.
Yeah.
You know, they see me working a lot. And that's
good too.
That's good and bad, you know, but I think as my oldest son has gone from high school and now is a freshman in college at Southwest Baptist University, where I went, I've been able to have some more deeper conversations with him than what I can have with my 15-year-old.
Sure.
But as my 15-year-old gets older, I think those opportunities are going to open up to be able to share that. When my son came back from college for Christmas, it was awesome to be able to sit down and hear some of the things that he was saying about school and about what was going on, and then talking about what he sees differently now that he's away from us. He sees what we've done for him. You know what I mean? I think I did the same thing when I was that age,
I think everybody goes through that.
I look back at my parents and I'm like, okay, they're not as dumb as I thought they were. You know what I mean? And I think, and I'm seeing that kind of play out in real time, and that's fun. Seeing, just being able to do what we're still doing and love on my family and not feel the pressure to stretch myself too thin. I always had a job and had a volunteer position and always was doing all these different things. And now I'm just growing this business, and I'm loving on my family, and I don't feel the pressure to do any more than that. And that's been really, really good. It's been really good. Not to say that serving at a church and volunteering isn't a good thing. It can be a very good thing. But for me, I needed a break.
Yeah.
This isn't necessarily the break I wanted, Geoff.
Yeah.
I really thought that ministry was where I was going to be for the rest of my life. I didn't necessarily want a break like this, but now that I'm 3 years removed from it and the wound is healing, I'm really, really thankful that God took me through it.
Yeah.
That's
a powerful place to be at.
Yeah.
When you're thankful for the storm that you've weathered.
Yeah.
That's an awesome place to be.
Yeah. I'm thankful for it. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be best friends with people. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to say that right. I don't want to make anybody mad, but there's still a wound.
Sure.
I want it to be a scar. I don't want it to be a scab anymore, but there's still a little spot that bleeds every now and then, and it hurts, and you just have to know when that happens and kind of back away and go lick your wound a little bit more, and try to take care of it. I know that God put me in this situation and did this because I'm realizing that there's a ton of people out there that are just like what we're talking about. There's a bunch of people that are just burned out of what that has become. I still hear, God wants to use you and here's ways you can volunteer. And I'm like, yeah, I get it, but I don't have to do that.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, I know that eventually I'm going to probably be able to talk with some people that have been through this kind of same situations, that have the church hurt wound going on, that have this, I don't want to turn this into a Christian podcast. You know what I mean? Like this, right. But this is where it's at. Like, I know that there's going to be times when I'm going to be able to encourage somebody to get up off their back too.
Yeah.
That like, you don't have to be here. You can go here. And this is how I did it.
Right.
And I don't take a lot of credit for this. Like all I did, Geoff, was get up off the couch. That's all I did.
Yeah. I
didn't solicit you, like to get you to use me to do your listings. I never walked in this door. I never gave you a business card. Nothing. You called me one day and said, "Hey man, I'd like to use you for this next listing." And here we are.
Yeah.
Like 10 listings later or more.
I think it's more than that.
So it's like, that's not my life has not, the last 3 years, I have not, all I've had to do is get up and go to work. Like, all I've had to do is get up off the couch and go to work. And God is literally providing the work. And then he just says, get up and go do it. Don't sit here and pout. Stop it.
Yeah.
And I know that's probably easier said than done sometimes, but if I can do it, then why can't you do it?
Right.
Why can't
anybody do it?
If you don't know Jesus and you don't know this God that I'm talking about, let me introduce you to him. But I don't want to introduce you to the one that I don't want to introduce you to how I used to know him. I want to introduce you to how I know him now.
Right.
Because I know him as my provider. I know him as my comforter. I know him as somebody who loves me with a deep love that I can't let go of. That I can't do anything that is going to make him not love me anymore. And I know that because my kids can't do anything that won't make me stop loving them. It's the same thing. It's deeper than that.
Yeah.
And so I'm at this point where I know God's going to use this in some crazy ways, but for right now, I'm just supposed to keep providing for my family, loving my family, and getting off the couch and going to work every day. That's it. That's it. And putting my trust and my love in him.
Right.
And if somebody's listening to this and they don't believe in God, they don't believe in what I'm talking about, that's absolutely fine. Like, I don't want, you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
I've been under the pressure side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the pressure side, I think people are tired of. I think a lot of people are tired of it. I hope that people can see that, yes, I've been through some things, but I know who I am. I know who he says I am, and I'm moving forward in that.
Right.
So yeah, I know you probably have more questions. I kind of get rolling, and I don't stop.
No,
whenever
it's
things,
good. Well,
things
and
happen.
you said that you wanted to be in, you thought that you would be in ministry of some sort. You're, just like you said earlier, to your point, you're in ministry right now as a photographer.
But I'm talking about full time though.
Right. Well,
you know what I mean?
It doesn't, the ministry itself, I think putting that label on it, that, or connecting it to being a preacher, being a worship leader, being something that's your paychecks coming from that.
Mm-hmm.
The ministry is just connecting with people.
Correct.
And sharing what experience we have.
Right.
The things that we've gone through that's built our faith, and maybe help people identify some of the things that are actually positive in their life that they're overlooking, because they're focusing all of their energy on the negative crap that they're dealing with.
For sure. Yeah. And I, even in our conversations, as you've gotten to know me, I've intentionally stopped myself from a lot of this because I knew you wanted me to be on the podcast. Mm-hmm. And I kept telling you a couple of times, I'm like, I'm not going to tell you anything because I want you to hear it for the first time right here.
Right.
Rather than while I'm setting up my drone to fly through a house that you've asked me to come fly.
Right.
And so, because this is the topics that all of this that I've said is not just a light, fluffy conversation. This is real. I'm sure somebody could listen to this podcast and they're going to get mad at me. It's really not my intention. I'm to a point where I'm not wishing ill on people anymore.
Right.
I hope they succeed. But that doesn't mean that they have to be in my life anymore. Right. That, like, there's boundaries that I've set up that are intentional. And it's because I know when that wound is ripped, and when it's ripped, nobody wants to be around me.
Yeah.
And 3 years, it's healed a lot. And I hope that in the next 3 years, I hope it heals more. I do. I was, even just a few days ago, I was sitting with God going, what do I need to do to finish this off? Like, what does completely healing from this look like, so that I can talk about it without bleeding? And I don't have that answer yet.
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like.
Well, I appreciate you coming and sharing your story. I know that's
man,
not the most comfortable thing to talk about, especially as men. I feel very self-conscious anytime I get a little tear in my eye, and I do whenever I talk about stuff that's near and dear to me. It gets me emotional.
Yeah.
And I think the programming of men are not supposed to cry. It's just always looking over my shoulder. And it's not true. It's ridiculous, but it's something that I fight. So I know that I'm not alone in that. I think
we all do. I mean, we're guys that have been raised by tough men. Like, my dad was a tough guy, and he died in 2019 is when he passed away. So he didn't have to deal with all the COVID stuff. So I'm kind of jealous of that. But, my dad was the most, like, solid guy I knew, right? He just got up, he went to work. He was successful, but not like super successful. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But he was so consistent, and he was so genuine. Like, that was just dad, but he was never real open about anything. Mm-hmm. So he's just real reserved, and I get that. I am that. Mm-hmm. But man, there's so many times in the last few years that I've just been like, I want to talk to dad. Like, I just want to share with him what is going on. And I'm thankful that my mom is still around. And even yesterday, she was, I was helping her with something, and she knew when it was snowing, she was like, I know you're not busy, so I need your help. And I'm like, ah. But in the same token, when I go over there, and we start talking about what's going on and how my business is going and how things are going, she's always like, your dad would be so proud of you. And it's not like that I live for that, but I wish I could just sit down and talk to him. I always thought that he wanted me to do a job and do it well, because that's what I watched him do. He was a grocery store manager. He did it well. He did it forever. I never thought that being an entrepreneur and having my own business was like, I don't know that that's what he would have encouraged me to do. But now that I'm doing it, I think he would be so on board with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he wasn't a risk taker. And this took some risk.
Yeah.
I actually had a conversation with my mom when I first started doing this. I said, Mom, this is what I think I'm supposed to do. If it doesn't work, will you help me feed my family? And she said, absolutely. Your kids are not going to go hungry. And I went, game on. And I never asked her for a dime. But having a mom be able to say that to her 42-year-old son,
yeah,
ignited something. It was like, God's telling me this is the direction. This is where the peace is. This is where I've got to go. I talked to my mom and she said, I'm not going to let your kids starve. Game on.
Yeah.
Let's go. And 3 years later, I'm going, all right, now what?
Yeah.
How do we grow this again? How do we do more? Even now, I'm thinking about guys like you, guys that I know that are in landscaping businesses. And I was talking to another guy that has his own chip distributing business. And like, I'm looking at how do we encourage each other to be godly men in these businesses? I don't care. I'm not going to invite you to church. Like, but I'm going to invite you to, like, how do I encourage guys who are entrepreneurial to put their faith in God the way I have? Like, yes, you're scared. Yes, you don't know what's going on. Get up off the couch. Let's go. Like, put your faith in him and let's go. I wasn't an encourager like that to people. I encouraged them to give to the church. I encouraged them to serve at the church, to be there all the time, to do these things, to build this thing that I was building. But now I don't want to build this thing. I want to build whatever you want. You know what I mean? Whatever, whoever's close to me, I want to build whatever they're passionate about. I even told my son when he went to college, I said, you can go to college, you can do the degree, you can get all that stuff, or we can figure out a business you want to start. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's how I look at these things now.
Yeah.
It's not just a one path deal. It's like, where are we going to go? What are we going to do? What's God telling you? Where's the peace? And this is where it is for me right now. Even though I work myself to death, and you know that. I don't slack off. But there's peace in it. And I don't know, I don't understand that. You know what I mean? But when you're doing what you're made for at that time, that's where it's at. And this may get unpeaceful for me. And when it does, there's going to be something that will still provide, but give me peace. Right. I don't know. Some of this I'm still trying to flesh out. I think, I hope you're seeing that.
No, for sure.
Because these are the things I think about when I'm driving down I-44. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Trying to figure out, is this still the path that I'm supposed to be on? If it is, great.
Well, I think that's a daily thing.
Yeah.
That's a daily question. Am I doing what I'm meant to be doing today?
Yeah, for sure.
Whenever you know that you are, that's awesome. Yeah. Whenever you don't, when you have a question about it,
yeah,
it's a scary place, but just remembering that God has carried you through low times before.
Yeah, for sure.
And definitely been there to provide.
Yeah.
That gives confidence that he'll be there again tomorrow and the next day.
For sure.
The next day.
Yeah.
No matter what circumstance we face.
Yeah. Last year at this time, whenever I would have a snow day, I would freak out and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't, like I'm not going to make any money today. And how do I do? And this year it's a different. What is it this year? This year I'm going to go fly my drone in the snow because it looks cool. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I don't have that. The fear is subsiding because I know who he is and who I am. And so and I've done a better job through the year of making sure that if I do have a day that I don't make any money, I still have some money, right? Like we have to be smart as business owners, as men. Like there's a time when you spend and there's a time when you save and there's a time that you got to do all of it.
Yep.
And The first year for me was, oh no, what do? I got to provide, just go to work. Yes, there's income tax. I'll deal with it later. Yes, there's these things. I'll deal with it later. I'm just trying to get this started. 3 years later, you're going, okay, I need to put so much back a week just so that I can get through the slow times.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I made this much more money this week than what we needed. So I'm going to just dump all of it in the savings so that when I have a snow day, I can go, it's okay. Yeah. Pull that out. We're good.
Yeah.
You know? So I think God doesn't, in all of what I'm saying, I don't think God just wants us to willy-nilly everything. You know, like there's still some things we've got to be responsible about. I can't just go, all right, God, take care of it. I've got to be responsible and know that he's providing through these months so well that if I do have to make a change, say the real estate market dries up and I make you mad and everybody else mad. Like I do I don't know. I don't want that to happen. Never. Hopefully not. But what if it dries up? I want to have enough of a cushion where I can go, okay, what do I need to do now?
Mm-hmm.
And give me a week or 2 or 3. I'll be back.
Right.
But I've been smart enough here to know that I got to have something if it falls apart, you know, and that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
But anyway, I appreciate it, Geoff. Thanks for.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Well, do you have a final thought for the listeners?
Man, final thought. I've been all over the place. I feel like, final thought would be that if you don't have a faith in God, I would encourage you to start realizing that there is more to this than just grinding it out every day. And if you're in a position that you don't know what to do, try to get alone with him. Do what's uncomfortable, which is put this away, this phone, put it somewhere where you can't hear it. Don't put a computer in your lap. Don't turn the TV on. Don't put a book in front of your face. Give yourself time to let the noise of this life subside. I had the opportunity to do that in a way that I didn't want. But now that I understand it, sometimes I long for it. I long for that peace and quiet that only I can get from spending time with him. Not feeling like I have to read something or do a devotion or, you know what I mean? Like all the things that I used to think that I had to do or that I felt guilty when I didn't do it. Now I find myself just wanting that peace and quiet and peace and alone, quiet. And once I got comfortable with that, now I realize that I should have been comfortable with it all along. That's part of the relationship that he wants. And I longed for it and didn't know it. And I think that we all kind of do. We're so inundated. Like this thing's gone off like 6 times since we've been sitting here. And I've had to intentionally ignore it.
Yeah.
That's how life is for all of us. There's another notification. There's another thing happening. Our kids are pulling at something, or there's no shortage of something for us to engage with.
Right. Be
intentional about engaging quietly with God. If you have a relationship with him, do it. And if you don't, I'd love to talk to you about it.
Awesome.
I don't know what that looks like.
Well, how can people find you?
Mostly on Facebook, anything at Warson Media.
At Warson Media.
Yeah, all the socials and YouTube. It's at Warson Media.
At Warson Media. Okay. Well, I'll put that I'll put a link to that in the description so people can reach out if this resonated with them, if anything of your story connects with their story. Yeah, for sure. So reach out, let people know. It makes a big difference whenever somebody reaches out and says, hey, this is actually really affected my life. I feel blessed to have heard that, and I want to tell you thank you. That means a lot. It's happened a handful of times. I always direct people back to whoever's on the show. I'm like, hey, please reach out to them and let them know, because I know that means a lot. But thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. I'm looking very much forward to what the future holds.
Yeah, me too.
With our businesses together.
For sure, man. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, boy.